Hey, Hunter here, co-founder of Infinite Catalog, where royalties don't have to be hard. And today, me and my super cool chain are going to talk about profit share record deals, my favorite subject. We're going to do a little back to basics primer on how profit share record deals work. And we're going to use Google Sheets and these little sandboxes that I built to show you a few different scenarios to try to really drill in how profit share deals work and how they are super flexible, they're easy to understand, they're easy to adapt, and they're easy to stay on top of, accounting-wise at least. Tracking the income from all the different sources, distribution, web store, etc., that can be the tricky part. That's what Infinite Catalog tries to help you with. But you definitely don't need Infinite Catalog to get started, and you don't need anything other than a spreadsheet and an awareness of how record deals work, how profit share deals work. 50-50 deals, as they're often called. They've been used by the independent music industry for decades. They are, in my opinion, vastly superior for a number of reasons to major label style, royalty-based PPD deals that we won't get into in depth here, though I will link to my article comparing the two. And yeah, we're going to walk through a few different scenarios, but first we're going to start with the super basics just to make sure that it's covered. And then we're going to walk you through a few of these in action to try to help people understand, because profit share deals are a very magical thing, in my personal opinion. They're not only easy for you to come to an agreement with an artist through, but they're easy for you to understand, they're easy for them to understand, and they're easy to make it so that this isn't some weird point of contention between the two of you. One party feels like the other is getting screwed. They are much more likely for people to be successful in the end. Success in this case being no one feels like they got screwed. And that lets people continue to work together. And as we all know, it can take a long time to break through or even have a chance at breaking through. And if you know how to do record deals, if you know how to do profit share record deals, you can try to build things together in a way that allows you to grow together and isn't just like one moonshot and it didn't work and now you're dropped by your label, or your next record gets shelved, or whatever terrible thing might happen if you are signed to a different kind of deal. So just the quick primer on how profit share deals work. They all work exactly like this. You take the income that you've made, you subtract all the expenses that you've spent, and that gives you the net. The net gets multiplied by the payee split, it's called. In most deals, this is 50% for the 50-50 deal, and that gives you the payee share, their share of the net. And then you add in or subtract any transfers, or otherwise known as advances, and previous balances from previous periods to get the current payee balance. So one more time in plain English, take all the income, subtract all the expenses to find the net, multiply the net by the agreed upon split to find the payee share, combine that number with any transfers, and finally factor in any previous balances. And here's a very, very quick version. And we are actually going to do a very similar version in our first scenario. Here's the template before we get to that. I'm going to link to this somewhere near or underneath this post, and you're very welcome to copy it and model out your own things. If you have questions about a particular scenario and how it might look or how it might work or how it might model out, please feel free to reply. Feel free to respond. Feel free to comment. I'll keep an eye on the comments and the responses, and I would love to respond. So don't be shy. You are welcome, again, to copy this. It should be self-explanatory for how to use it, but I'm here for any questions. So on to our first scenario, which is the most basic standard scenario of all, which is just a 50-50 profit share deal with an advance. And to model that out, I'm going to just, I've added the advance, which let's just say $2,000, which goes in as a transfer. Again, it happens after the split, if you'll recall. Here it is here. It is here. And that's because the advance needs to get paid back in full by the payee's share. It's the only thing like that in this formula. The other expenses are typically above the split. They are considered part of the net, and for that reason, they're actually in effect shared between the parties who are participating in the net. People don't often think about it that way, but in the case of a recouped record, the payee and the catalog will have risked the same, or the expenses will be shouldered equally. Not risked the same. That's not quite correct, because almost always the label puts in the money and takes the risk. If we don't make any money back as a label, we don't get paid back. The artist doesn't have to pay us back. That's the risk. That's what we're doing as a label. We're going to take that risk, and the artist is, glad to have somebody else taking that risk and helping them get their music out there and heard. So quick aside there, but back to our model. This is the payee balance at the end of period 1, which these periods are intentionally nondescript. It could be a quarterly period, which is what I would suggest as the best cadence for royalty accounting. Could be a 6-month period. It could be a 1-month period. It could be a 1-year period. Doesn't matter. It's a period. And at the end of the period, you carry over the previous balance or pay it, as we will see here in period 2, because guess what? The release has recouped. There's more income that's come in than expenses that we have spent as a label, which is being factored in as the previous balance here. So there's a higher payee share than there is a previous balance, which gives us a positive payee balance. Congratulations on recouping. And the label will pay that at some point during period 3, which gets entered in as a transfer to settle that balance, the previous balance. And here in period 3, we're making more money. There's some expenses again, but it's getting split, and the payee share is now $22.50, which add in your other earnings, add in the advance, and that brings us to this very even earnings between the payee and the catalog, which also illustrates something that I love about profit share deals, which is that it's actually possible for the payee to know what the record label made off of their release. You can't do that in major label style PPD deals. It is literally impossible. Most of the time, they don't even know how much they made off of your record in those kinds of deals, which seems insane. Anyway, okay, that's scenario 1. Very simple. Scenario 2, we're going to up the complexity a little bit and model out a scenario that is actually quite rare. I've not really seen this a lot, but it is certainly possible, and I like it as a way to illustrate how flexible these deals are. And the scenario in this case is a 60-40 deal where the artist is repaid for, let's say, recording expenses. Let's say the artist paid $10K for recording expenses and wants to put it out with a label. The label is very happy to put it out. They've got $10K of their own to spend, but instead of just giving that $10K to the artist and having nothing to spend on the release, which wouldn't really be helpful, the artist agrees, let's hold off on paying us back that $10K that we spent, and instead please put that into, manufacturing, marketing, getting the word out about the record, doing the record label stuff. And the way that we're going to reflect that in this deal is with a positive transfer. Essentially, the artist advancing the label money. Crazy, right? It's not common, I grant that. But in this case, it's what everybody wants, and including the fact that the label has agreed to pay the artist 60% of profits should things recoup. And I like this scenario just to show that you can really do a lot with there's only a few inputs, but you can really do a lot to adjust to the situation, including how advances are treated and how the split gets decided on. So yeah, here's the label putting in their 10K worth of expenses and counting that 10K advance as an expense. We're going to count it in both places, which you can do in certain scenarios, because that's basically what happened. It is those recording expenses are in this case, being counted as something that should be shared between the artist and the label, while at the same time, the artist is being credited for that money, essentially as just a way to acknowledge that the recording expenses, once the artist has been paid back for the transfer, they should still be counted as or they could still be counted as an expense. This is one way to do this. You could obviously just remove the 10K here and the 10K here, but it wouldn't actually have the same ultimate balance in the end, because of the way that the split works. Anyway, 20K goes in. We've got this new payee balance, which has been boosted by the transfer, the advance that is being credited to the artist to the label from the artist. And that gives us this previous balance. In period 2, let's just say 20K in income comes in. There's no more expenses, which gives us this net, which gives us this, multiplied by this split, gives us this payee share. And now the payee has a balance of 10K. They're owed $10,000 from the label. And so at this point in time, the label has spent 10K and earned it back. The artist has spent 10K and earned it back, and everybody is even. Moving on to period 3, let's just say there's another 20K in income, which again gets split 60-40. And here you can see that the payee balance is 12K. They were paid the 10 that they earned in the previous period. The new balance is 12, aka 60% of 20K. And that's how it's going to be for the rest of the term. The artist is now getting 60% of any revenue or net that comes through, and the catalog is making 40%, which for them may be a great deal because they didn't have to spend that extra 10 up front, risk that extra 10 up front. And again, just a good way to show the flexibility of these deals and the many different ways you can play things as long as you are clear and upfront and transparent about what it's going to be. And dare I even say, like, model it out like this to walk you yourself and your artists through it. Here's what we hope to happen. Here's what we expect to happen. Here's what, the balances will be if it does happen. That brings us to scenario 3, which I wanted in here to help explain a little more deeply the concept of term length and what happens when a term ends. So every record deal has a term which specifies when the deal comes to an end. If it doesn't have a term, then it's what's known as a handshake agreement, and it's essentially an ongoing mutual agreement that can end at any time. Terms are typically a time frame, for example, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or life of copyright, which often, though not always, see link in post, means forever. In general, the artist wants as short a term as possible, and the label wants as long a term as possible. What's fair? Really, it depends on a number of factors, but the simplest way to think about it is that the term should be in relation to the advance and or the agreed upon label spend. The label has guaranteed in writing that they're going to spend X, or the label has handed you a check for X or Y. And yeah, I think it's very helpful to think of those things in relation to each other. Little to no advance or guaranteed spend, short term. Medium-sized advance or agreed upon spend, medium term. Big money, lengthy term. This is a simplified version, but it's more or less true in my experience. And I think fair to keep those things sort of in balance with each other. Terms are also very commonly linked to recoup status. If it's a 5-year term, but at the end of the 5 years, the record has not recouped. Typically, the record does not revert back to the artist. The label keeps getting to collect the revenue on the record to try to get back to even. They're still in the red on things, and yeah, that's typically how terms work. Usually, if it's not recouped, the artist doesn't get it back. The label gets to keep collecting and splitting things in the way that it was already drawn up originally. And terms don't have to be years. They can also be things like revenue thresholds. When it gets to a certain amount of revenue earned, then it reverts to the artist, or things change. Or if you're Jay-Z, you can agree to become the president of Def Jam in exchange for getting your masters back 10 years hence, which is exactly what he did and was a very good move. Anyway, when the end of the term is reached, things don't need to come to a screeching halt. And that's what I'm trying to illustrate here. I actually don't think it's great when it's just at the end of the term, the artist can take it back, but the label will keep earning at that same rate, but the artist can decide to take it back at any moment. It's obviously fine for the artist, but, well, no, it's not. I'd say it's an equal benefit to instead create sort of an on-ramp or off-ramp, a way to ease things into a different place. So that the artists can still take their masters back whenever they want, but in the meantime, their share of profits goes from, say, 50% to 90%. So that's what we're trying to model out here. It's just a normal 50-50 deal at a certain unspecified term length. The term ends, the record is recouped. So, the deal specifies that at that point, the deal switches from 50-50 to 90-10 in the artist's favor, essentially becoming a distribution deal, or a label services deal. And this way, the artist, they can still take the record back at any point, typically in these kinds of arrangements, but they could also choose to leave it with the label if they're not ready or able or willing to take back the record from the catalog to do their own distribution, to do their own royalty accounting if they have other people that need to get paid, like producers or bandmates. So this can be a good deal for everybody. And from the label's end, they don't have to worry about like, oh, I'm still making 50% on this record that the artist can come and take back at any time. It just sort of builds in an off-ramp, which I feel like is a better way of going about things than the hard stop and then the sort of free-floating, no one really knows, or no one knows what the other party is going to do. The artist or the label certainly doesn't know when the artist is going to say, hey, by the way, give us that back right now. And in the meantime, the label can sort of wean themselves off of that revenue stream if indeed the term is up. Okay, that's it. That's the video. That's me trying to explain the magic of profit share deals through some scenarios, the sandboxes. Thank you so much for watching. Please do check out Infinite Catalog if you need help with royalty accounting, and hope to see you again soon. Bye.